For a very long time, there has been a question that keeps coming back throughout human history. How did some ancient civilizations become so advanced, even though they didn't have modern technology? In the middle of the deserts of ancient Mesopotamia, thousands of clay tablets were discovered, filled with strange symbols and writings. When historians and language experts decoded them using modern technology, one name kept appearing over and over again: the Anunnaki. For the ancient Sumerians, they were powerful divine beings connected to the heavens and the forces of nature. But as some people delved deeper into these tablets, a more controversial theory began to spread. What if these divine beings aren't just myths? What if they're real? What if there is a real event behind these stories? And is it possible that some of the legends of the ancient world are just distorted memories, or memories that don't match what really happened? That's why, as a result, we can't fully understand them now. But we will take it slowly and carefully examine every piece of information and event in detail. But before we start, don't forget to like this video. It means a lot to us content creators. Thank you very much, and now let's get started. Before we go to the theories, we first need to separate verified history from modern speculation. Speculation. Because of the internet, real archaeology and science fiction are often mixed together nowadays, and this is where the true mystery of the Anunnaki begins. In the area that is now part of Iraq, one of the earliest known civilizations in the world was formed: the Sumerians. According to historians and archaeological records, the cities of Sumer emerged around 4,500 BC. Here, cities like Ur, Uruk, and Eridu were built near the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Despite the intense heat and dry environment, they were able to create advanced irrigation systems to bring water to their fields. Because of this, agriculture expanded and their cities grew rapidly. According to studies by historians and institutions like Britannica and the Penn Museum, the Sumerians were also among the first to use an organized writing system called cuneiform. It wasn't just simple drawings. They used wedge-shaped symbols on clay tablets to record trade, laws, taxes, religion, and astronomical observations. In other words, this is where many parts of human history began to have permanent records. And one of the names most frequently mentioned in some of their religious texts is the Anunnaki. But it's important to clarify this. According to mainstream historians and Assyriologists, the Anunnaki are part of the religious belief system of the Mesopotamian civilizations. They are not officially recognized as extraterrestrials or alien visitors by modern archaeology. In fact, according to translations of ancient texts from the electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature of the University of Oxford, the word Anunnaki usually refers to a group of gods connected to the heavens, earth, and underworld in Sumerian mythology. But why did they become connected to alien theories? Because in modern times, some authors offered alternative interpretations of the ancient tablets. One of the most well-known is Zecharia Sitchin. In his books in the 1970s, he said that the Anunnaki were advanced beings from another planet who visited Earth in ancient times. But according to many experts in Mesopotamian languages, many of Sitchin's translations are not accepted by mainstream scholarship. Many Assyriologists say that there is no clear evidence in the original Sumerian text that states the Anunnaki were an alien race. This means that a large part of the idea of the Anunnaki as aliens is just a theory and not an official archaeological conclusion, but only a modern interpretation. But even so, the public's curiosity still doesn't go away, because the more the Sumerians are studied, the more it shows how advanced they were for their time. For example, they used a mathematical system based on the number 60. Even today, we still use this in timekeeping and geometry. 60 seconds in a minute and 360. Degrees in a circle. They also had organized legal systems, accounting methods, and large temple structures known as ziggurats. Some of these buildings were constructed using only mud bricks, but they lasted for a very long time. Even their study of the heavens was also impressive. According to historians, the Sumerians regularly observed the movements of the stars, moon, and visible planets. This was important for making calendars and agriculture cycles, but there are some internet theories that claim it would be impossible to do this without help from advanced beings. According to mainstream experts, this is not impossible. Many archaeologists explain that civilization gradually developed over a long period of time. When the food supply is stable and society is organized, more people can focus on engineering, science, astronomy, and writing. And this is where the big problem comes in with many viral documentaries online. Sometimes they present mythology as confirmed history. For example, there are viral claims that some Sumerian carvings supposedly show rockets and spaceships or modern technology. But according to many experts, most of these are just religious symbols or artistic representations of their gods. There are also instances where some images used online are taken out of context, and as these are repeatedly reposted on social media, they start to look more and more like the truth. The claims that aren't fully verified. But this doesn't mean that there are no mysteries left. In fact, there are still many parts of ancient Mesopotamian history that continue to be studied up to now. There are clay tablets that have not yet been fully translated, and there are archaeological sites that are still being excavated. Another site that is often compared to this is Göbekli Tepe in modern-day Turkey. It is a prehistoric site that, according to archaeologists, is even older than the Sumerian civilization. Because of these discoveries, some people are asking if it is possible that there are even older civilizations that we still do not fully understand. But until now, there is still no verified evidence proving that aliens built the first civilizations on Earth. And that is the important difference between evidence and speculation. The truth is, sometimes real history is even more impressive than conspiracy theories. Just think about it. Thousands of years before the internet, electricity, or modern machines existed, there were people creating writing systems, organized cities, irrigation networks, mathematics, and astronomical observations. That doesn't mean they came from aliens. It's just possible proof of how intelligent and resourceful ancient people were. But even so, the mystery of the Anunnaki remains alive, because there is one thing humanity will never lose: our curiosity about our origins. Because the more we discover about the ancient world, the more we notice how many parts of history we still don't fully understand. Just keep watching, because there is still so much more for you to learn here that will surely amaze you. As more clay tablets are discovered in ancient Mesopotamia, one name keeps coming up repeatedly in these old writings and has become the center of discussion: the Anunnaki. In the ancient Sumerian texts, the Anunnaki are a group of gods who play an important role in their religion and mythology. They are the forces that control nature, order, power, and the fate of mankind. And among the many names that appeared in their mythology, there are only three figures that are often mentioned: Anu, Enlil, and Enki. Anu is recognized as the god of the sky and one of the highest divine figures in the Sumerian belief system. He is often described as the distant ruler of the heavens. Meanwhile, Enlil is quite different. In many ancient texts, he is associated with wind, storms, power, and authority. There are some stories where he is described as strict and severe in punishing humanity when it becomes disorderly or disobedient. And this is where one of the most well-known parts of Mesopotamian mythology comes in: the Great Flood. In some ancient stories from Mesopotamia, there are accounts of a massive flood that almost destroyed all of humanity. According to historians, this is similar to other flood stories in different cultures, including the story of Noah in the Bible. But according to experts, this doesn't automatically mean that all flood myths originated from a single historical event. It's possible that many ancient civilizations experienced severe flooding. And while Enlil is often associated with power and punishment, a different image is linked to Enki. In Sumerian mythology, Enki is often described as the god of wisdom, water, invention, and knowledge. In some stories, he is the one who helps humans learn agriculture, irrigation, and the building of cities. And what's interesting here is that there is real archaeological evidence showing that the Sumerians' irrigation systems were indeed very advanced for their time. According to historians and archaeological studies, they built extensive canal systems that brought water from the rivers to the dry lands of Mesopotamia. Because of this, large-scale farming and the rapid growth of their civilization became possible. And here, the curiosity of some people began to deepen. How did a civilization that existed thousands of years before modern technology become so organized? For mainstream archaeology, the answer is a long period of human innovation and social development. But for some alternative theorists, it's possible that there was guidance from more advanced beings or a lost civilization. Up to now, there is still no credible evidence to prove this, but there is one reason why the debate continues. The gods of the Sumerians were not just simple mystical figures in their stories. In many tablets, they are described as if they were real personalities. They get angry, argue, feel pity, and sometimes even regret. Because of this, some researchers in the past wondered if some mythologies might actually contain memories of real historical leaders or ancient rulers who eventually became divine figures in people's stories. Because they already had emotions. In fact, this isn't a new idea. Even in other civilizations like ancient Egypt and Greece, there were kings and leaders who were later associated with divine status. But when it comes to the Anunnaki, the controversy grew bigger because of the introduction of alien theories in the modern era. Nevertheless, it cannot be denied that many parts of ancient history are not fully understood. Thousands of clay tablets are still not fully translated. Until now, archaeological excavations continue in the ancient region of Mesopotamia, and with every new discovery, we see even more how complex the world's earliest civilizations were. One of the most surprising things about the Sumerians is not just their temples or ancient cities. What's even more mysterious is the extent of their knowledge about space. Think about it. More than 5,000 years ago, there were no telescopes, no modern equipment, and no computers either. But even so, the Sumerians were able to study the movement of stars and planets with incredible accuracy. They weren't just looking up at the sky every night. They really observed it seriously and in detail. While other ancient cultures at that time only saw the lights in the sky as ordinary stars, the Sumerians noticed that there were some stars that moved differently. They moved in a different direction and had their own path in the sky. This is how they identified the planets such as Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. And what's even more surprising is that they understood that these planets were not just simple stars. They had their own movement and pattern. This is something that many civilizations only discovered after a very long time. Archaeologists have found many clay tablets that clearly show how advanced their observations of the sky were. They recorded the movements of the planets, changes in the positions of the stars, and even patterns that repeated over time. One of the most remarkable examples of this is their study of Venus. Thousands of years ago, the Sumerians already noticed that Venus sometimes appears before sunrise and sometimes can be seen after sunset. What's even more impressive is that they knew it was just one planet. In other ancient cultures, people thought for a long time that the morning star and the evening star were different things. But the Sumerians understood this a long time ago. And not only that, they had tablets that recorded the movements of Venus in such detail that even modern astronomers are still amazed by them today. Because for many scientists, it's hard to imagine how they managed to do that using only their eyes and simple tools. In fact, there are still people today who get confused about the number of planets. Many still include Pluto, even though it's no longer officially considered a full planet. But the Sumerians, thousands of years ago, systematically tracked the planets that can be seen from Earth. And as experts study the tablets, they discovered even more. The mystery only deepens, because it's not just planets that are written there. They also have star maps that are almost identical to the arrangement of constellations still used today. It's as if they had a very clear understanding of the entire appearance of the sky. That's why a lot of questions came up. How did they do that? How was an ancient civilization able to create such a detailed map of the sky without telescopes or advanced technology. Is it possible that this was simply the result of thousands of years of repeated observation of the sky? Or could they have had another source of knowledge? Isn't it even more impressive because their astronomy was supported by advanced mathematics? The Sumerians developed what is called the sexagesimal system. It's a way of counting using the number 60 as the base. Because of this, it became easier for them to compute fractions, large numbers, and exact measurements. And it's fascinating to think that even today we still use this system. When we look at a clock with 60 seconds and 60 minutes, or when we measure an angle using 360 degrees, that's still part of the mathematical legacy of the Sumerians. As time goes by, archaeologists are discovering even more tablets, and many of these have complex calculations about lunar eclipses, the movement of planets, and astronomical cycles. There's even a famous artifact known as the Venus Tablet of Ammisaduqa. This tablet, which dates back to around 1600 BC, contains detailed records about the cycle of Venus. And according to many astronomers today, it's surprising how accurate it is for an ancient document. Because in their time, they didn't have telescopes or satellites, but somehow they were able to predict when Venus would reappear in its correct position. And here, the debate among historians gets even more heated. How did the Sumerians really acquire that level of knowledge? According to most scholars, it's possible that this was simply the result of a very long period of observation. Over many generations, scribes carefully recorded the movements of the heavens until they gradually developed a more accurate understanding of them. And honestly, that explanation does make sense, but for others, there are still questions that remain unanswered. For example, how were they able to track the subtle movements of distant planets using only their eyes? Was simple observation really enough to achieve that level of accuracy? Because of this, some researchers believe that their knowledge might have come from an even older source. Is it possible that there was an earlier civilization? Before the Sumerians, there were cultures that have long been lost to history, but left behind knowledge that was later inherited by the people who came after them. Some also point to ancient places like Göbekli Tepe, a very ancient site that was built almost 12,000 years ago. For others, these ancient cultures may have a connection to the rise of advanced knowledge in Mesopotamia. And of course, stories about the Anunnaki are always part of this. In ancient tablets, they are described as beings who supposedly came from the heavens and taught humans about astronomy, mathematics, and engineering. It's only natural for mainstream historians to view this as mythology or symbolic stories. But for many, it's still chilling to think about how close some legends are to the real discoveries of archaeology. And as the Sumerians are studied more, it's becoming clearer that their observation of the sky wasn't just out of curiosity. It was also practical for their survival. They used the movements of the moon, sun, and planets to create the earliest calendar systems. Because of this, they could determine when the floods would come, the right time for planting, and even when to hold their religious festivals. In other words, their knowledge of the heavens was one of the foundations of their entire civilization. But even today, a great mystery remains. How was an ancient society able to understand the movement of the cosmos so early in human history? Was this really just the result of perseverance, observation, and long periods of study? Or is there a deeper story that we still do not fully understand? Is it possible that some ancient legends about beings from the heavens have traces of real events, memories of knowledge or experiences that have been passed down through different generations? As we dig deeper into the secrets of the Sumerians, the questions become even more unusual, because in the end, it might not just be the history of an ancient civilization that will be brought back, but also our entire understanding of the origins of human knowledge. Throughout human history, many civilizations have advanced because of knowledge passed down from earlier generations. So why would the Sumerians be any different? It's possible that their advanced knowledge was a combination of observation, knowledge inherited from other cultures, and things about the past that we still don't fully understand. And even today, the question remains, was the remarkable knowledge of the Sumerians simply the result of perseverance and observation? Or is there an even older source of their wisdom that has been completely lost to history? The more we discover about the ancient world, the deeper the mystery becomes. And perhaps the truth about the origins of human knowledge is stranger than we think. Aside from their advanced knowledge, there is another mystery that repeatedly appears in the ancient Sumerian tablets. In the clay tablets found in cities like Ur and Uruk, they describe certain beings from above who descended from the sky and intervened in human life. But the way they are described is unusual. They are not simply gods worshipped from afar. In many stories, they communicate directly with humans. They give commands, teach skills, and sometimes even seem to directly guide the building of cities and ways of life. In the ancient story of Atrahasis, for example, these beings are described as teaching about irrigation and agriculture in a very detailed and practical way. Meanwhile, in the legend of Nanki and Ninmah, there are parts that seem to show the design and management of humanity using symbolic language. Because of this, some researchers have started to ask, why do the Anunnaki seem more like advanced teachers or rulers rather than ordinary mythological gods? Of course, for mainstream historians, these stories are just mythology. And that's normal because many ancient cultures use legends to explain the world. But there's something unusual about the consistency of the Sumerian stories. They repeatedly mention that their wisdom came from beings who descended from the heavens. In the 20th century, a writer named Zecharia Sitchin further popularized this idea. According to his theory, the Anunnaki were not just beings. They were not simply symbolic gods, but visitors from another planet that he called Nibiru. But it's important to clarify that almost all mainstream scholars do not agree with his interpretations. Many experts say that some of his translations are wrong or exaggerated, and there is no solid evidence supporting the alien theory. However, this idea still became popular because of the mysterious details of the Sumerian tablets. There is another possibility that is more grounded. What if the beings from heaven were not extraterrestrials, but real people from a more advanced culture? In ancient times, it was normal for people to see foreigners with unusual technology or knowledge as divine or supernatural. Is it possible that there were travelers or settlers back then who brought new knowledge to Sumer and eventually became part of their mythology? Another artifact that is often debated is the VE-243 cylinder, VE-2. For some researchers, it seems to show the solar system at a time when there were no telescopes yet. But according to many scholars, its design could also just be symbolic. And this is where the mystery deepens even more. There is no solid proof that there were alien visitors in ancient times, but until now, it remains a mystery why some stories about beings who came down from the sky are so detailed. Imagine that you're trying to put together a huge puzzle, but half of its pieces are missing, and the instructions are written in a language that almost no one fully understands anymore. This is exactly the situation historians and archaeologists face when it comes to the Sumerians and the mystery of the Anunnaki. Yes, thousands of clay tablets have already been found. There are ancient artifacts, carvings, and detailed stories. But until now, the full picture of their true history is still incomplete. And what's even more surprising is that experts often don't agree with each other about the meaning of their discoveries. One of the biggest debates is about the translation. Translating the Sumerian language is not easy. It hasn't been used for thousands of years, and many words can have different meanings depending on the context. Even a small change in the translation can change the entire interpretation of a tablet. For example, even today, scholars are still debating the true meaning of some phrases about the Anunnaki. Is it really literal beings who came down from the heavens? Or is this just poetic language to describe the power and high status of their gods or kings? Another big problem is the lack of archaeological evidence. Many tablets are already damaged, missing parts, or still remain buried underground. And even the best artifacts that have been found are often just fragments of a bigger story. It's like finding a few pages from the middle of a book. There's no beginning and no ending. Because of this, many questions don't have clear answers. There are some Sumerian texts that seem to describe astronomical knowledge that appears more advanced than what would be expected for that time. There are also debates about a planet called Nibiru that is mentioned in some controversial interpretations of ancient texts. This is not accepted by mainstream astronomers, but it still remains a part of discussions about Sumerian mysteries. Even the most skeptical scholars admit that there are some parts of Sumerian history that are difficult to fully explain, and sometimes the problem is not a lack of curiosity, but being overly cautious. In the world of academics, ideas that stray too far from accepted history are quickly labeled as fringe or pseudoscience. That's only natural because strong evidence is important. But history has also shown that sometimes things once considered impossible eventually become accepted discoveries. Another intriguing aspect of the Sumerian civilization is their use of the number 60 as the base of their mathematics. Until now, we still use that system in time and degrees in a circle. But where did they get such a practical and advanced system? Were they really the first to create this, or was there an even older culture that influenced them? In the end, this is what the whole debate revolves around. Should we disregard ancient stories just because they are difficult to interpret? Or should we study them even more because there might be parts of the truth that we still don't fully understand? Until now, there is still no complete answer. But one thing is clear: ancient history is a story that is not yet finished. And as we discover more, it becomes more possible that the true history of humanity is stranger and more mysterious than we have long believed.